Breaking news out of Dallas this morning. The Cowboys are acquiring wide receiver George Pickens from the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the latest from our NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. The Steelers will reportedly be receiving draft compensation, including a third rounder and some other pick swaps. Pickens is entering the final year of his rookie deal, posting 59 catches for 900 yards and 3 touchdowns this past season. So this is the production making its way over to Big D. This past season averaged about 7.4 targets per game, just over 4 receptions per game, those 3 total TDs. And if you had him on your fantasy team, you probably wanted a little bit more production because he was giving you 7.1 in all those PPR leagues. We mentioned the man, now we bring him in, our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. And JJ, we're waking up here on a Wednesday morning with this news. Is this a surprise to you at all?
Not a surprise at all that George Pickens is no longer going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. They had made that very clear around the NFL, certainly after trading for DK Metcalf a couple of months ago. And then when we got to the NFL draft, whether it happened on draft weekend or after draft weekend, it was clear that George Pickens was on his way out of Pittsburgh. Not really that big of a surprise if it's Dallas that he winds up with, obviously. We know that Jerry Jones had said they were working on something. We know the Dallas Cowboys during the draft did not take a wide receiver in any of the 7 rounds. And, of course, they are the Cowboys who sometimes will give up a decent amount of draft compensation in order to get a guy that they really want. Remember, they traded a 5th-round pick for Joe Milton, the quarterback. They traded last year a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo with the Carolina Panthers, a former 2nd-round pick. And so if there is a surprise in this, Zach, it is giving up a 3rd-round pick in compensation for George Pickens. Look, there is no question at all that he has immense talent, and that to get someone who is capable of 1,000 yards receiving like he did in 2023 before missing a couple games this past year, the first of his career, and getting just below that threshold. Look, you would always send a 3rd-round pick for that player. But that person, what we have seen in 3 years in Pittsburgh, issues always surrounding accountability and maturity. And so now what you are only guaranteed if you are the Dallas Cowboys is 1 year of George Pickens. There's not that 5th-year option that would be available if you cannot agree to terms on a long-term contract at the conclusion of his rookie deal. The only sort of mechanism you have is the franchise tag. I don't know that that's a place that the Dallas Cowboys ever want to go with this player. And so, look, again, they are getting more than a 3rd-round talent in the player George Pickens, but still a risky proposition for the Cowboys in acquiring the person and everything that comes with George Pickens.
Yeah, so with that, what do you maybe view as a success if we go a year from now and, okay, they give up a 3rd-round pick, they get George Pickens? Is it to hope that he can fall in line, I'll call it, and they then sign him to a new contract? Or what do you think the thinking in Dallas might be?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. You know, I think that Jerry Jones and everyone in Dallas says, okay, we're going to put the star on the side of your helmet, and you will understand.
Dallas this morning with the Cowboys have acquired a wide receiver, and oh boy, I'm so happy. George Pickens from the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the latest from our NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. This AM, the Steelers are reportedly receiving a draft compensation, including a 3rd-rounder, and of course some pick swaps there on both sides. Pickens entering that final year, his rookie deal, posting 59 catches and 900 yards and 3 touchdowns this past season. So when it comes to him going to Dallas, they get a number 2 next to CeeDee Lamb. And these are what these numbers look like for him in 2024. Of course, when he got there from Georgia, had to go through some growing pains, but the numbers are there. You see targets a game, almost just at 8 per game there, and about 65 yards per game there, as well as total touchdowns. But when it comes to Pickens, they got a wide receiver in Dallas to help CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, and I'm so happy. And somebody to help me here with my happiness, Lejay Duzable. And Lejay, you know how I feel about this because we needed this for so long. But your reaction, of course, for Dallas getting a receiver next to CeeDee Lamb.
Brandon, this is a massive deal for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's not forget they're chasing the Washington Commanders and also the Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles. And people had questioned what Jerry Jones was doing this offseason, not adding an heir apparent to CeeDee Lamb. To your point, I have a stat for you, B. Going back to the 2021 season, that's the last time Dallas had more than one receiver eclipse over 800 yards. And that was Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz, and CeeDee Lamb. All three of them did it in that 1 year, and they had one of the most explosive offenses in football. So it was time for them to get CeeDee Lamb some help. And you talked about it. They got a true number 2 receiver. Some would even say a middle-of-the-pack number 1 receiver in George Pickens, who is a true X receiver, big body receiver. You can put on the backside to keep that safety in the middle of the field. That way CeeDee Lamb can do his work in the middle of the field, and you don't have to worry about him getting doubled as much. Because if you decide to move that safety and you leave George Pickens one-on-one on the outside, we've seen the highlight reels. You see some of the pictures right here. He will go up and high point the football. So this was a massive deal for the Dallas Cowboys because they needed somebody to pair with CeeDee Lamb also to compete in that very tough NFC East.
Speaking of those numbers, check this out. The most receiving yards at 30-plus air yards in a season, right behind Tyreek Hill from 2017 with 12 of those. And you talk about it there, Leger, when it comes to the Cowboys, they get a number 2. But on the flip side, the Steelers, we thought we'd see Metcalf on one side, Pickens on the other. We don't know who the quarterback is. Assuming it's Aaron Rodgers. What does this mean for them? Of course, they get picks, but you lose maybe a possible number 2 there in the Steel City.
And that's the question. How does this potentially affect Aaron Rodgers coming on board? Now, I think there's something to be said that Aaron Rodgers this offseason threw with DK Metcalf, and he didn't throw with George Pickens. Maybe he knew something was coming down the pipe in regards to a trade. And then also, you talk about a major loss for that Steelers offense. You knew something was probably going to happen when they paid $30 million plus a year to get DK Metcalf after trading a second-round pick for him. So George Pickens is going to the final year of his deal. Things have kind of become contentious between him and some things that were happening on the offense. He felt like he wasn't getting used properly. So the Steelers look at it this way. We just gave $30 million a year to DK Metcalf. George Pickens is probably going to be asking upwards of $25 million per year after this season. We're not going to be able to pay both guys. Let's get some draft capital. Let's get a 3rd-round pick, and also let's do a pick swap where we get a 5th-round pick and give up a 6th-round pick. So I actually loved it from that standpoint when you talk about the business of football, because the Steelers felt like they weren't going to pay 2 receivers over $25 million a year. Why let a guy just walk in free agency willy-nilly? Let's get some draft capital for him.
By the way, Pickens' agent is to say with his Micah Parsons, who Jerry Jones said he has no idea what the guy's name is. So we'll see how he handles that in the future when trying to negotiate with Pickens. But I'm going to put you in the professor chair, Deuce. I need you to give me a grade for both sides here. What are we giving?
For the Dallas Cowboys, A-. I talked about how competitive the NFC East is, and this helps you get into that competition. There has needed to be a running mate for CeeDee Lamb going back to the 2021 season. I told you that was the last time Dallas had multiple pass catchers go over 800 yards receiving. You would think with George Pickens doing that each of his first 3 years, that would continue to happen. Plus, he's motivated. He's in a contract year as well. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to give it a B+. Yes, you lose a big weapon on offense with George Pickens, but you get major draft capital. Let's not forget.